There is hope for Paige Bueckers and the Dallas Wings franchise.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey everyone, welcome to Locked On Women's Basketball. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Kalia Butler. Alongside me is Sophia Jones. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. So on today's Friday episode, we're going to have a little Fever Friday moment. We're going to break down what the Indiana Fever have to do for free agency and what is in store for Caitlin Clark after being injured for a majority of the season. But breaking news, now there's only one final spot left for WNBA head coaches right now, and that's in the Seattle Storm, because the Dallas Wings are closing in on hiring longtime South Florida coach Jose Fernandez as their new head coach. This will be the fifth head coach in 7 seasons for the Wings, who are, looking to be a contender following what happened this season, but also having a franchise player in their number one pick, Paige Bueckers. And before I get into Sophia's reactions to this, I just want to read what now Coach Fernandez of the Dallas Wings, what he accomplished while he was at the University of South Florida. He had 10 NCAA tournament appearances, 4 conference championships, has 9 WNBA draft picks and signees, and 24 former Bulls playing professionally worldwide. He has 20 wins against 25 ranked teams, won 2 gold medals with USA's basketball's U18 and U19 in the FIBA World Cup as an assistant coach, recruited and coached players from over 22 different countries. Sorry, the list is going on. 14 straight 19-win seasons, recorded his 485th career victory this past season, 2-time American Athletic Conference Coach of the Year. South Florida won the WNIT championship, defeating Kansas back in 2008, recruited and coached over 40 all-conference players, and inducted into the Sports Club of Tampa Bay's Hall of Fame on June 8th, 2022. I'm done now. That was his list.
And that was a lot. And I think through all of that, what you really hear is this guy is a winner. He knows how to win. He built such a great program at University of South Florida. And I think especially with this Dallas Wings team that almost feels like they're looking for a little bit of a resurrection with the arrival of a generational player like Paige Bueckers. I feel like someone who is an established winner, who has experience, a lot of years of experience as a head coach, will be very valuable to a franchise like the Dallas Wings. So I think this is a good get. I would be very excited to see how he's able to just kind of help turn this team around as well.
And a big part of this is his connection to UConn head coach Geno Auriemma. They have been friends for quite some time. I believe dating back to almost 3 decades is what Coach Auriemma said. They were actually dating back to the Huskies and Bulls being Big East Conference rivals, which is like so wild to think about. But Geno Auriemma said, I think he's a tremendous coach when talking about Coach Fernandez, obviously, as everybody knows, but he cares deeply about the game itself. He puts in the time and effort. So when you have that connection as well of you are now going to coach Paige Bueckers if you're Coach Fernandez. One of your closest coaching friends is somebody who coached Paige her entire collegiate career. They have an incredibly close relationship. And what we talked about in previous episodes when speaking on the Wings is that the main priority is going to be building around Paige. And you don't even necessarily need to teach Paige certain things because she is such a well-rounded player, but obviously somebody that's still developing within just being in the WNBA. But being able to understand how to coach her, I think, with the last coach that they had, we saw a lot of those clips of, players having questionable looks on their faces when plays were getting drawn up. I think when it comes down to this, this is how you coach Paige. This is what I like to do. It's just somebody you can rely on that knows Paige in and out. And obviously her being your franchise player, understanding how to build around now.
Definitely. And going back to the fact that you mentioned about Coach Fernandez having a huge international presence and coaching so many international players. He talks about how his style of coaching is having an extensive playbook along with a lot of fundamentals. So, passing, catching, and finishing around the rim. And I think when you can have a group whose nucleus might consist of Paige and Enrique, and I would imagine probably adding in some more international players if he's following that trend at all, like at South Florida, where I think their most recent roster for this year has 14 players, and I believe 10 of them are from out of the country. So I think if you can have that and just make sure that everyone is playing the right way for a player like Paige Bueckers and even Enrique, they thrive in systems when the ball is moving a lot. And I think even when we look at Paige, specifically that 44-point game that she had, it looks so easy because she can impact the game so much on and off ball. So coming off of screens, creating her own looks, creating looks for others, just movement in general. And I think those are a lot of the fundamentals that international basketball and Coach Fernandez's style of play is based around. So I think he'll be able to implement that to this existing roster as we see it right now, because we know free agency is probably going to be a little crazy this offseason.
Those international players that you mentioned, let's take a look at just USF's roster this season because he did recruit them. However, he did announce that he won't be coaching them this season due to taking the job with the Dallas Wings. But when we look at this roster, you have a player from Bulgaria, Montenegro, the Ivory Coast, Finland, France, the Dominican Republic, Israel, Montenegro again, Latvia, and Spain. This is somebody who also derives from a European country himself. He prioritizes international focus, but I think it's important because when we're thinking of what these expansion teams have looked like, even with the Golden State Valkyries, we saw a lot of Europeans and international players coming into the franchise. But we saw how much success that had as well, intermixing them with some of the US players. They bounced off of each other incredibly well. And I believe that they were able to just learn from each other given on the difference of play between, maybe the physicality of the US, but the developmental part of playing overseas and being on maybe a European team. And I think that's what is going to be most exciting about this team, because I feel similar to his recruiting at USF, he's going to want to get as many international players on this Dallas team. But we were also talking about it's going to be a little bit hard because when we're thinking of free agency, this might not be the place that a lot of free agents want to go. So that might make it a little bit difficult, but that's when you can maybe start to tap into some of the international talent as well. So I think that's going to be a key focus when we're thinking of what this roster is going to look like this upcoming season. You obviously have Paige. Enrique is going to be questionable, but I do think we might have a lot of international additions.
Definitely. And I think just overall, the decision in hiring Fernandez, I would think is also rooted in potentially creating some kind of stability. The Wings or Fernandez will be the fifth head coach in 7 seasons for the Wings. And it is hard to create any type of culture or real team identity when you're having constant change and shifts. And for Fernandez to have coached the University of South Florida Bulls for the past 11 years or 11 years plus, that's stability right there. And so I think this is a long haul decision as well. And when you're looking towards come or sticking someone with Paige Bueckers, because I would, if I'm a GM, I hope that Paige is with us for a while. I think that's what they're aiming to do with Jose Fernandez.
Well, Paige is on one of those rookie contracts, so she's going to be there for a little bit. So now that you have somebody coming into her second season with the option of those rookies getting that fourth play option, I think they'll have some time to hopefully build some culture if they can maintain this consistency. But coming up next, Fever Friday, we're going to talk about free agency with the Indiana Fever. Your ambition just met its match. With Robinhood, you play for the win, not just on game day, every day, locking in on every opening, beating your PR, beating it again. Channel that drive into your money. Robinhood puts you in control of your money. Trade stocks and apps, options, futures, and crypto all on one platform. You can and execute your own trades from a desktop with Robinhood Legends advanced tools, or take advantage of the new Robinhood strategies tailored managed by a team of experts. You expect more from yourself, expect more. Get started today at robinhood.com/yourmoney. Again, robinhood.com/your money, your move. Okay, so the Indiana Fever have made it very clear, especially head coach Stephanie White, have made it clear that they are going to focus their free agency around Kelsey Mitchell. They have made it a priority that she obviously showed up for them when everybody else was out, when everybody else was down. She was the biggest reason that they were able to make that playoff push and get to a semifinals round. And I think what I enjoyed most about hearing Stephanie Wright talk about Kelsey Mitchell is she has so much respect for her, so much respect for her game and her ability to be this deep in as a veteran and still constantly seem like she's improving every season, every game, helping her teammates. So when we're looking at this free agency, only Caitlin Clark, Aaliyah Boston, and Michaela Timpson are guaranteed to remain with the Fever and have contracts through 2026. The rest of the team are all free agents. What challenges does that present to the Fever, Sophia?
Again, kind of along that theme of consistency towards what you're building, I think that the Fever this past season, if they didn't run into as many injuries as they did, could have been, I mean, I'm saying this about a team that did make it to the semifinals of the WNBA playoffs, but that was kind of unexpected to some people. It would have been expected if everyone stayed healthy. I 100% think. I mean, when you have a player like Kelsey Mitchell, who was their leader this season, and the way that she quite literally gave everything that she had, to where in that last game, her body shut down on her and had to go to the hospital, and actually ended up with a little bit of a scary incident there. I think she said that she's recovering well, though. But I mean, I don't think there's anyone who you would want more to just be that leader again. But along with a lot of those free agents, you would hope to retain a good number of them. I think the Fever, they had a lot of talent. They had a lot of talent on that team. You saw flashes where it looked like they were the team to beat. I think even back to that Commissioner's Cup game, where the only one missing, I think, was Caitlin Clark, and they blew out Minnesota in Minnesota. So I think that was a really big indicator of what that Fever team could have been. I think back to that game against the New York Liberty, where Caitlin Clark just really went off in hitting those 3-pointers. So I think it's just something that they have to be optimistic in what they're building, and especially when you have a coach like Stephanie White at the helm as well. She's not new to this, she's true to this, and that she's definitely a head coach that I think brings a lot of our players. We saw the way that she was really just gluing together pieces this past season. So if she has a consistent group with her, I think that she could really create something special.
Yeah, those free agents being Natasha Howard, who's going to be an uncorable, unrestricted free agent, Kelsey Mitchell again, Sophie Cunningham, Sydney Colson, Brianna Turner, Ari McDonald. Those are all going to be unrestricted free agents. Lexi Hall, she's going to be a restricted free agent, and Chloe Bibby will be reserved. So that is a very significant portion of your team. Obviously, you have that young core still with Caitlin, with Aaliyah Boston, who also really showed up during that playoff push. I mean, Aaliyah Boston is just such a consistent player for them as well. But again, she's also only a couple years into the WNBA, where she's still finding her momentum, constantly evolving and developing. And I think we saw her grow even more under head coach Stephanie White, and Michaela Timpson, also another young player who is kind of finding her spots in her position within this roster. But when you think of some of those scoring threats, obviously Kelsey Mitchell, Natasha Howard, her veteran leadership as well. And, we talk a lot about leadership on and off the court and having veterans on the team, but I don't think everyone understands how important it truly is to have one of those vocal leaders like that on your team, who not only leads vocally, but also leads by example in how they execute on the court. And even, we saw Sophie Cunningham be able to come in and be consistent and knock down tough shots, but also show a lot of grittiness as well. I think she gave a lot of spark for the Fever, who seem to have these very intense physical games for whatever reason that may have been. But there was a lot of physicality that came through Sophie Cunningham as well, which unfortunately had led to her hurting her knee this season. But even Lexi Holt, again, another scoring threat who has been a consistent perimeter shooter. You lose a lot when it comes to the Fever. However, as opposed to what we were talking about with Dallas, this is also a location. Actually, I might take that back. This is and isn't a location for free agents. I think it is when it comes down to being able to make these playoff pushes, having a coach like Stephanie White, again, having a player like Caitlin Clark, Aaliyah Boston. But at the same time, we kind of saw what happened with DeWanna Bonner, who came in, and her feeling like she couldn't really have a place on that team. Obviously, third all-time leading scorer within the WNBA. That might present some question marks for free agents coming in who want to take over an offense, or, want to be every equal part of it as a Caitlin Clark is offensively.
Yeah, and I think for the Indiana Fever, they're one of the highest offensive rating teams this past season. And so there's a lot of points to go around as well. And it'll be interesting to see how Caitlin Clark comes back into that dynamic again as a playmaker, as a passer. We're going to get into her a little bit more in the next segment. But I think, just like Coach Steph White said, Kelsey Mitchell has to be that number one priority in retaining in terms of their unrestricted free agents. And I'd be really, really excited to see how Aaliyah Boston is going to progress even more as well. I think ever since her rookie season, she's taken a lot of steps. I feel like she's gotten in better shape. She's running the floor better. She's more mobile and agile, able to step out to the elbow and be a little bit more comfortable putting the ball on the ground as a face up as opposed to back to the basket all the time. So I think, again, just the core that they have is very strong. It's just about trying to retain as many of those pieces as possible. I think you can even look towards a player like Sid Colson, who, of course, is the self-proclaimed face of the league. But for her, I mean, she's tore her ACL, so we don't know if she will be playing at all in this next WNBA season. But having someone like that is huge for locker room culture as well as her on-court performance, just being another person in that point guard position. But you get down to the people like Sophie Cunningham and Lexi Hall, who are real backbones of the defense that Steph White wanted to implement, which was, again, one of the top rated in the league when they had the majority of their roster available. And a lot of those kind of just, like you said, gritty enforcer type players. The WNBA, they only have 12 players per roster, but growing up in Miami, one thing I always kind of did enjoy a little bit was that enforcer type role player where, like, as a Heat fan, it was Udonis Haslem, where, if you if you touch any one of the players, like, you better be ready for someone to, like, get in your face a little bit. And I think a little bit of that is fine, again, to a certain extent. But yeah, it's just they're competitors. This Fever team has a lot of fire to them. It will definitely be an interesting free agency for them. Like you said, just kind of being a destination when you look at the money and the strength of the team, but kind of not when you look at some of the controversy surrounding them and a little bit of the legacy that Dewana Bonner left as well.
Well, coming up next, we're going to dive into Caitlin Clark and maybe what she could have been capable of doing this season, but also her future with the Fever battling through her injuries.
Let's be real. Making excuses doesn't solve anything. You've heard them before. It's just stress. I'm tired. Or it happens to everyone sometimes. But when it comes to performance, sometimes your body just needs a little extra support. And that's where Rugia comes in. Rugia.com offers fast-acting, doctor-prescribed treatments for ED, designed to help you stop making excuses and start making moves. If prescribed, your treatment ships discreetly straight to your door. Visit rugiet.com/lockedonnba to get 15% off your first order. That's rugiet.com/lockedonnba. And don't forget to use our code LOCKEDONNBA so that they know that we sent you. Rugiet, stop making excuses and start making moves.
All right, Caitlin Clark played just 13 games during her second WNBA season, but was still named an All-Star, even though she unfortunately couldn't play in the All-Star game. Wow, it was in Indiana, which was so painful, but still you saw so many fans coming and rooting for her nonetheless, and rallying behind all the All-Stars that were there. She averaged 16 points, 5 rebounds, and 8 assists through just 13 games. However, missed that second half of the regular season and the entire postseason due to her second groin injury. In early August, she also suffered a left ankle sprain that ruled out any potential return. So a lot of injuries for Caitlin this season, and I think we saw that take a toll on her, especially seeing her get that second groin injury. And you could tell the discomfort in her face. And that is just such a hard injury to come back from, especially not only one, but two. I think maybe she may have come back a little bit too early after the first one, and which unfortunately led to the second one. But that's just a really tough place to even try to treat. And then on top of it, having an ankle injury. But in some good news for her, towards the end of the season, she did start to play 2v2, 3v3, and said that towards the end of October, she was going to try to get back into playing 5v5. But when you look at the beginning of her season and through those 13 games, averaging 16 points, 5 rebounds, 8 assists, she was on to a very hot start coming off a Rookie of the Year. What potential could Caitlin add for this Fever team, and what difference would that have made in their playoff run, Sophia?
I think it definitely could have made a difference in that backcourt. I remember when the Indiana Fever came to Golden State for the first time, and we were playing up against Caitlin Clark. She was not injured for this game, so she was available, and she did not make a single three. And when Coach Nakase talked about it post game, she mentioned the physicality that she wanted her players to play against Caitlin Clark with. And so I think when you have a duo between Kelsey Mitchell and Caitlin Clark, it allows them to move more freely around the court and not have to deal with some of that physicality as nearly as much every single possession, which again, I think maybe might help Caitlin Clark finish the season a little bit healthier, as well as Kelsey Mitchell, who, I mean, she played every single game up until that last one where she had to exit a little bit early because of her condition. But I think she would have helped tremendously, even the way that we saw the Indiana Fever team progress throughout the course of the season, where at the beginning they lingered right around 500, then they really started to take off a little bit. And again, I think that just figuring out with the new coach with Steph White, it takes a little bit of time for players to get used to a coach as well. So I think that if she would have been available that entire season, it very well could have been a different story for the Fever.
Fever facing multiple injuries, obviously from multiple different players, but Caitlin Clark being the most notable, especially with just how early she went out in the season. We still saw her be very vocal on the bench, very vocal towards the officials, but she made it clear during her exit interviews early October that for USA basketball women's national team during the run of the 2026 FIBA World Cup. That's going to be a priority for her right now, is what she had mentioned. Unrivaled and Athletes Unlimited, not really a focus for Caitlin. She never directly come out and said why she didn't want to participate in those leagues, but going to FIBA and, kind of experiencing some of that international play as well seems to be a little bit to her tempo, and maybe somewhere that she feels like she can slowly progress back into her typical playing speed, which might be much more beneficial than her jumping into an unrivaled, because obviously that's also 3v3, very fast pace. If you're coming off of a second groin injury, that might not be the best environment for you to continue healing and continue training and working up to what you were before.
Definitely. And I think some people don't realize how difficult it is to have a major injury in season and then going through that return to play progression. I tore both my ACLs in college at different times, but when you're trying to get back in season, there isn't much 5-on-5 full court contact drills to actually go through. So if you're a player like Caitlin Clark, where you're working your way back into everything, it's hard to feel comfortable jumping straight into the game when you're not getting those same reps in practice and getting enough of them, quite frankly, especially for the WNBA season where you might be playing 6 games in 10 days or 3 games in 4. It's a very compact schedule that doesn't allow a lot of time for practice. You're traveling all over the place. So I could see where it was very difficult for Caitlin to get integrated back into the whole Fever system. But I think that's where this offseason will be a great opportunity for her to just get healthy, get stronger. And then, like you mentioned, I think doing some things for USA basketball in the FIBA World Cup would be a great way to get back reintegrated and get those full court 5-on-5 contact reps before the WNBA season.
Yeah, and we've mentioned it with other players, and obviously just yesterday when we're thinking of an Olivia Miles, obviously somebody who is waiting to get into the WNBA now, but just the priority of these players to come back to a league as healthy as possible. And as they're figuring out these CBA negotiations still, obviously, which we have all talked about, maybe these players might have more time than we think. We don't know what this next season is going to look like either. They made it clear that they don't want to have a lockout, but if there is a lockout within the WNBA, does this give more time for a player like Caitlin Clark to recover? Does it incentivize some more players from the Fever to maybe want to come back, depending what that body will look like? Sid Colstead, obviously, that had gotten her Sophie Cunningham, who made it clear that she had left Indiana for the time and is going to be doing a majority of her rehab in Arizona, but she made it clear how much she loved being in Indiana. But again, health is going to be the top priority for all of these players. And we all know what Caitlin is capable of when she is fully healthy. But I think we also have to be patient with Caitlin whenever she does make her return to the WNBA, and maybe expect a couple less logo threes, just because she's still probably getting her legs under her. So making sure that fans understand that she's going to need a little minute. And this next WNBA season might not look like what she wants it to if she, is recovered during that time, but she's still going to add a lot of depth and obviously just her control of an offense and being a facilitator and playmaker. Excited to see Caitlin get back on the court soon.
I am too. And I also think what would be beneficial would be having a full off season under the tutelage of Stephanie White. I mean, easy opportunities to ask her to watch some film, maybe even ask her what she can work on, specific actions that they might run during games to work on during training sessions. So I think that could be very beneficial as well. But it'll be a very good off season for Caitlin Clark, I would expect, and I hope to see her fully healthy because I mean, it's not even debatable when she's doing well. It's good for the league, quite frankly.
Absolutely. We all want to see some good basketball for the 2026 WNBA season. But for now, that is all from us this week. Thank you so much for joining us. We will be back on Monday. Make sure to follow